Everyone.
Hello, hello.
Good morning.
Time appropriate greetings. Eventually somebody will join that's working a different time zone.
Well, I guess we can go ahead and get started. I expect maybe a few more people trickle in, but let's jump into it. Hello, everyone. This is the distribution maintainers call for April 13th, 2021. And starting on the first thing on the agenda. So this was something brought up by Balu in the maintainer Slack channel, the suggestion for enabling danger in forks. And he had linked to an example where they've managed to do this for the Rails project. So the big thing that's been holding us back on danger for doing this is the fact that like the end result is that it posts a comment to the merge request, and that requires an access token of some sort. In all of our projects, we give it an access to a bot to do so, but that bot has access to a lot of projects, and we don't just, people with forks don't have that access token to our projects to post those comments. So people have always had the option of adding an access token to their own fork to make this happen. But the kind of the compromise at this point is for the Rails project, what they decided to do is to leave the danger job in there and still have it fail and complain, but simply not post the comment to the merge request. So at least there's, if something is like completely wrong, there's a failing job in the pipeline, and the community user can go and take a look and find the information in the job log. So this was brought up by Balu in the Slack channel. I wanted to throw it in here, and then my thoughts on it is we should probably log an issue and then to tackle this and schedule that for some point in the future.
Sounds good. So let me make sure I understand the behavior. Like you would still get like a notification that the job failed. You just wouldn't see the comment.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
still get a red pipeline.
Yeah.
The generic "your job failed" message.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you
and then there's
email that your job failed.
Yeah, you get the email, and then there's failures, and then there's warnings. So the warnings would be less visible than they are. Well, okay, for a community merge request, it's not visible at all right now, so it's still better. But warnings still wouldn't be super visible, and like the most common warning is typically around which labels to assign to get our team's attention, and whether or not you have a change log. Are like the most common things that the warnings manage to surface. But any errors that are that danger is currently looking for will at least be visible. I believe there was a danger limitation that prevented us from doing this a while back, that we couldn't even get that far on forks without an access token. But I believe that it seems like that part of that has been resolved in danger, so that danger only needs the token for commenting on the merge request.
Cool. So create an issue is the next.
Yeah, I'll take an action item to create an issue for it.
Do we feel like there's enough unanswered that it like a spike first, or just jump right into it?
Being that it's already been done for the Rails project, I think probably just jump right into it. And if worse comes to worse and something comes up that blocks us, then the merge request is blocked for a while. But
Gotcha.
Yeah, we can do one project at a time too. So it's not like we
Yeah,
have to do
yeah.
it all at once.
yeah, that's true. We should do one project at a time and then get a good idea for it. Yep. Was there any other topics that didn't already have issues or maintainer discussion issues that anyone wanted to bring up before we jump into the maintainer discussion labeled issues? If not, we can jump into maintainer discussion issues as labeled in our issue tracker. From the last 2 weeks, there is a new one logged, and then also I grabbed one of the old ones into the list, and we could talk about others as well. But I grabbed one of the old ones that I thought would be easy for us to knock out as an action item to get the label off of this one. So on the new side, there was a new issue logged around our Podman support position. And Jason, you already have a comment on this.
Right. So first, let me give you a bit of context for those not familiar. Podman is just another way to interact with the Containerd runtime. Okay, it's an alternative to Docker and some of the defaults and the capabilities and patterns that it uses to set up the container space are a wee bit different. Surprise, came out of Red Hat, might be a little bit different. There's literally no difference in the underlying runtime. All we may really need to do is document that, yeah, it'll work in Podman. By the way, that feature requires that capability. So if you look at, there's a couple of issues that I actually linked right before the meeting. Both of these are basically newer revisions of Podman stopped adding cap audit write to all containers, and then Git failed because SSHD couldn't do a write to the audit log because it was hooked into PAM. DJ, you probably remember the discussion around that one. We have another one where somebody upgraded to one of the latest Fedoras and then couldn't get the container to start back up. It was running fine before. And that was literally just add the permission to your start and you'll be fine. So we're not wrong here. It's just we have no real reason to bind ourselves to the Docker controller runtime. I'll say it that way versus the Podman controller runtime.
Yeah, so from my perspective, so we, as Jason already linked some of the issues that have come up recently, like we kind of, at least our team already is supporting Podman, as in like and the community is as well. So the issues that have come up with it over the years have been fixed. It was also like the first easy distro runtime versus Docker to in the repo switch to Containerd properly as the back end. So when we were first testing the switch to Containerd as the backing, like we used Podman for that testing, and it allowed us to find issues with how we were detecting whether you were in a container or not in our images and stuff like that. So I think, like, I totally agree. I think we should support Podman. Particularly, I especially don't think we should be particularly like married to only Docker, especially being that like in Kubernetes instances, like Docker by default isn't going to be the running thing on those nodes.
Well, we need to be clear here. That's not really ever been the running thing on the nodes. The difference is that you would have the daemon, and instead of talking directly to Containerd, it would talk through the shim in Docker because people were accustomed to Docker instead of understanding that Docker actually uses Containerd. So really, they're just taking that shim out of the way and letting the API talk directly to the runtime that is Containerd.
Yeah, the good thing about us changing our expectations is like, so there are differences, but like Jason mentioned, they're more in like how the defaults are set up in the wrapper. And there's a few other differences in that wrapper, but for the most part, those differences just represent things that we shouldn't have expectations on in anywhere where we have. Or if we do have expectations, they should be optional and documented and stuff like that. Yeah, that's my thoughts. And Jason's, it seems like. Does anyone have anything else they'd want to comment on this one?
So cap audit right is the only tweak or difference that's bubbled up in our testing.
This is
true
the
or
only
false?
one I've seen very recently.
Yeah, what we did
and-
is we actually removed the community went ahead and I did a bunch of review and research on it. We went ahead and removed the default PAM setup in order to not run into it right away.
What
Gotcha.
we should do is have someone take the time to do testing on what permissions we do actually need when running the omnibus in full. And once we have those delineated, we can just write it down. Like, these are the capabilities we need to have functionally. Which things can we take away? Which things do we, like, if we, for example, if we were just take the container, turn off all capabilities, and then turn them on one by one, we would know pretty quickly which things we do and don't need.
Gotcha. I guess that may be kind of leading into my next, we'll call it a question, but so let's say we decide to support Podman. In terms of like ongoing validation and testing of it, how would we ensure that no new capabilities have snuck in there or anything else that would cause us to touch it?
I think in terms of like actually ensuring, like in like an automation fashion, this goes hand in hand with, we have the open issue around like a rel-based Docker image. Probably just at the same time as doing that, we would also
Gotcha.
use that same.
Use rel with Podman.
Yeah, basically. Like, not as, we can make other decisions on the actual building of the image, right? Like the tool to build the image and the tool to test the image can be different because they may have different requirements, like for us type thing, to make it easy. But certainly like that would make sense as a time to start looking at that.
There's also the possibility that we basically find and or build the equivalent of Podman and Docker, right? We have Docker and Docker. Let's just do Podman and Docker, and just add it to a job somewhere. And if it fires up, it fires up. If it doesn't, well, we probably need to find out why.
Yeah, something like that would be good. Yeah, in terms of like action items to support it, I think we could just say, like in kind of response to support in the issue, that our team is looking to support it from the development side, or we do support it from the development side, basically. And then like the next step, as is what Jason mentioned, is we document, like we log an issue to follow up and document what the exact capabilities, not just for Podmine, but just in Containerd in general, what are the capabilities that our omnibus container needs to run properly.
Yeah, I like that part.
As a separate one.
Yeah, that has use even beyond, right? People are interested in what perms are required.
Did anyone else have anything else they wanted to comment on in regards to Podman support? If not, was there any other new in the last 2 weeks logged maintainer discussion issue that I missed, or one that anyone wants to bring up? If not, we can jump over to one of the old ones I threw in here. I threw from the kind of list we have going, which is linked under the maintainer discussion issues link. I just grabbed one that I thought we could really quick mention and probably switch into for scheduling, or at least this is my thoughts, was documentation for self-hosted cluster. This is in GitLab charts, and a user both asking about this and also like volunteering to help. But that part is kind of like separate, I think, from the maintainer discussion now. This is more like, do we want to mark this as a thing we would like to have in our documentation, is instructions on setting up a self-hosted cluster.
I think what we need to be clear on is the definition of instructions for setting up and requirements, right? So the problem is, and we've seen this in OpenShift, like for HBAs, you need to have a functional metric server that we can access. For an ingress, if you're going to use a load balancer, you need to have a load balancer provider. If you're not going to use a load balancer, then here's the method to expose Nginx directly. Here are the caveats that you should know about. We see this in Kind, K3S, RKE, whoever decides to, I'm going to ship you something out of the box, right? K3S out of the box includes Trafic. Trafic does not operate exactly like Nginx. And unless you set the right things, installing K3S on top of Trafic, you can't use port 80. But the problem is there are so many variations that we do not want to start writing down, this is how you set up a self-hosted case. That's not our job. Okay. We don't tell people, here's how you make a VM in EC2. Here's how you make a VM in GCP. That's too far. What we need to do is, these are our requirements. These are the things that you can trade out. Have fun.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Jason, could you throw a comment on that issue that kind of summarizes that? I think that we'd like documentation. Yeah, that's what we'd be looking for, documentation on our requirements. And it can be targeted with like the self-hosted cluster mindset, as in, all that means is assuming, it means we don't make assumptions that you had OpenShift or assumptions that you had any particular distro, right? Is what we could do, or assumptions that you had a cloud type thing, right? That would just be the frame set in which we list the requirements.
Right. So for example, we have actually had issues in the past, and DJ, you probably remember this. The HPAs don't work at all. And we're literally sitting here going, what are you talking about? Because somebody was running on a self-hosted kube spray, no less, and had no metric server turned on, because it's not on by default as a part of kube spray, because they're trying to just trim it down as far as possible. It's one of those things where we're just so accustomed to most of the providers having metric server out of the box that when HPA didn't work, we're sitting there going, huh? And I'm sure that users probably run into this type of thing. And we've seen, we have bits of documentation like, here's how to use an external Nginx instead of ours. In Minikube, we had a document like, turn this off, turn this on, very specifically. But I would like to shy away from that, except for the local development environments like we have for Kind, right? If we're specifically talking about development, that's one thing. If we're talking about actual deployment in a self-hosted managed cluster, different story.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yeah, so I think the next steps here is, yeah, Jason, if you could leave a comment about that on the issue, and then I think mark it for scheduling and remove the maintainer discussion label on it, I think would be good.
Yeah, we do also already have it tossed into the viable to complete epic.
Yeah, I did see that. It was another reason I wanted to make sure it was discussed in this meeting. I think if we're going to switch it into a list of requirements, I think it still makes sense that it could be in that epic.
All right. If nothing else, on to impactful MRs.
Yeah, so over on the Helm charts side, I merged a change from JSON where we disabled the old deprecated GitLab operator in our CIs in the charts. The JSON still left the code there for now, so we could toggle it back on just with a CI variable. But in master at any branch that's been branched off since, we're just using the more default Helm install that we've been recommending, well, that everyone has been using who's been using our repo that hasn't been using the operator. So we're back to solidly testing on that with the only like little addition is we do have a little wait for at the end of the install that actually waits for everything to come up before it proceeds, which is like our own separate little combination of Helm commands in a loop.
And the gist and reasoning here is straightforward, is it's officially deprecated. Why are we still testing it all the time? Especially if it was never a released feature. Especially considering anybody who's troubleshot our pipelines in the last 2 months. I give that face because the thing needs to die in a fire, because I'm really tired of a pipeline getting halfway through, getting killed off for whatever reason, and then the subsequent pipelines not working because we need to manually restart the operator because it thinks the job is still running from a month ago. So yeah, kiss that puppy goodbye.
And then on the Omnibus MR side, I merged a change from Yorick that moved us to commit-based change logs. So this is an update on our long-running maintainers meeting series of what we're doing with change logs in Omnibus. After probably about a month ago, maybe 2 maintainers meetings ago, we decided to move forward with just the new changelog in Omnibus. But when we went to use it for the 13.10 release, we realized it was actually missing some of the changelogs that we had in YAML. So that resulted in an investigation and a bunch of log issues against the feature that have been since fixed and released on GitLab.com. And so now the resulting changelogs look good. And so for 13.11, we are using the new feature to generate the changelog at during the release in the next week or two here. So the YAML-based changelog feature that we've been doing just isn't a requirement for merge requests anymore at this point in Omnibus. So yeah, this commit was about updating danger to change to that new check and format for the new commit-based changelog. Kind of as a side note to this, rather than picking, so in Omnibus, this is what we're doing for now. For the team, in terms of using this in our other projects, certainly, like there's no harm in people adding the changelog trailer anywhere when we're doing merge requests, but I don't think we should, in my opinion, I don't think we should move forward this on all of our projects until another team also goes and flexes the capability. So we were dog fooding for the first one for Omnibus, but I would like to see another team pick it up to really know that it has momentum, that this is going to be the thing that we use all throughout GitLab before we use it everywhere. Because at this point, I think if enough other teams at GitLab don't like it, it's still right now pretty easy for us to switch back.
Right, and there was an issue just opened about doing this in the CNG and in Helm. And I'm with DJ. We need to prove it out a little bit first and look for community impact, because I can tell you it's hard enough for us to get changelog entries added, let alone to make sure that people put the changelog line into their commits.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that any. So was it Yorick asking that we move on to those projects?
Yeah, like it literally was just open in the middle of the meeting.
Oh, okay. That's funny. Yeah, so my thoughts on it, like I said, is that I would like to see other teams other than us start picking it up before we commit to it fully across the team. We've already exercised it and have an idea of the workflow that works for us. But if we move on it on all of our repos, but it ends up having a lot of issues for the rest of GitLab, and the rest of GitLab doesn't move to it, I think we will have wasted our time. So I think adding it to the rest of distributions repos, in my opinion, I'll check in on those issues and have some back and forth with York. But in my opinion, it'd be more valuable to have other teams try it now that we've already validated that it works for our workflow. We can leave it on just the one project for now, I think. Does anyone have anything else they want to bring up in the maintainers meeting? If not, I think that's a wrap. Thanks, everyone.